Good morning here in Silicon Valley, day 3 of 9th Cloud Expo, Silicon Valley. We have our first power panel. Let's also say good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you if you're following this out there on the World Wide Web. And if you're following it out there on the web and you're in the hotel, come on down. Shame on you. We have, as you know from the title of this panel, selected 5 superstars, 5 cloud superstars. Now, what makes you a cloud superstar? Well, let's find out. First, you've got to be involved in some kind of cloud company. So let's see what kind of cloud companies our 5 are involved with. Please introduce yourself, gents, starting with Treb.
Hi, I'm Treb Ryan. I'm the CEO of OpSource. OpSource provides public cloud, hybrid cloud, and hosting solutions for software as a service companies and system integrators.
Short, sharp, and shiny. I like that. Martin, can you be even shorter?
I'm not sure, but I'm Mårten Mickos. I'm CEO of Eucalyptus Systems. We're the world's most widely deployed private cloud software platform. So description is, it is like Amazon Web Services, but it runs on your own servers. We make that software for you. It's open source software.
Pretty straightforward. Dave.
I am Dave Roberts. I'm the VP of Strategy for ServiceMesh. And we make a policy and governance solution for hybrid cloud environments for large enterprises.
Rodney.
Hi, I'm Rodney Rogers. I'm the CEO of Virtustream. We are a cloud service provider focused on complex enterprise application-based environments, and we have essentially invented a way to provision infrastructure in a unit of measure in a sub-VM, sub-virtual machine manner.
Good morning. Warren.
Good morning. Warren Heffelfinger. I'm the CEO of GoGrid. We provide complex and hybrid hosting solutions to companies all around the world.
Now, that was the shortest. I like that. Shortest can often be best. We have before us an entire day, another day at Cloud Expo. We've had 2 very full days, and I'm always thinking the same thing. When these delegates wake up, particularly early in the morning, how can they get the best out of a show that has technical content everywhere, but also has so many vendors sitting there ready to talk with them? So I wonder if we could just help them. They say that a wise man, not by, his clever answers, but by his clever questions. So let's give these delegates the sense of wisdom. What should they be asking? Start with Martin. What should they be asking when they're out there talking, whether it's here at Cloud Expo or anywhere in the world with a cloud vendor, with a service provider? What should they be asking?
They should ask, tell me who's using this in production.
I like that. Who's actually using it? And if
production.
the answer is one day soon, should they just move to the next stand?
No, it could be a great innovation, but it's a very important distinction.
So they should have an open mind, but that's the main thing. Is that the main thing, Dave?
I don't think it's the main thing, but it's a good question. The follow-on question to that, or the question before that I would ask is, how do I make sure that my firm is going to convert cloud technology into real business value and not just have another round of useless IT spending that goes into the expense line on the balance sheet and really doesn't pay off?
That is a kind of tough question.
It's a tough question.
But it's the right question. Rodney, I know you've been tweeting madly, more or less that this time I've cast Rodney here as the bullshit slayer on this panel. He's out there, yeah, right? He's out there slaying bullshit wherever he finds, and he claims it's everywhere.
Well, it's difficult when you're walking through a show floor to read the general marketing literature and truly understand which technology is a truly differentiated, innovative technology and which technology is simply being over-marketed. Everybody kind of says they do the same thing. They claim to be the best at what they do and the like. A specific question, I agree with Martin's question, especially in sort of the larger enterprise, being able to run true production workloads on a cloud is actually a real differentiator in our space. That's a question that we welcome as well. Another question that I often pose to people is the cloud oftentimes is referred to as a consumption-based vehicle. So you're a company, you want to buy compute, you buy it as you need it on a consumption-based basis. But I think the dirty little secret there is define consumption. Consumption can mean a number of different things. If it's your service provider's definition of consumption, it could simply be what they've allocated for you to consume. the de facto standard being a virtual machine. True forms of consumption are what you actually use below that and how you use it in aggregate across all of your workload requirements. It's a complex question, but it's one that you really need to engage with a booth and really dig into sort of their definition of consumption. How do you truly pay for what, do you truly pay for what you use, or do you pay for what you use based upon a service provider's allocated definition of that? There's a very important difference.
Warren, what should people be saying? So what are they saying as they come up to go? Are they asking good questions? Should we help them?
Certainly they're asking good questions. I think there's some, the obvious ones have come up here. Does it work? Is it secure? I think a real provocative, try to wake up the crowd kind of question is, we know who the winners, we have a sense as to who the winners are going to be or who they have been so far. Provocative questions for me are, who are the winners going to be in the next 5 years? And then I think that begs the question, who are the losers going to be in the next 5 years?
That's going to really excite the people on the booth. Are you going to be a winner or a loser in the next 5 years? Just so I know how to spend my time. Treb, anyone asking OpSource, are you going to be the loser?
No, it's cloud. Show me what you can do. I can actually figure out how, if it'll make me faster or save me money. We're not in a world anymore where I need to ask an analyst about how they're going to think is this going to work, or should it implement, or do I need a long slide deck. Show me what it does, and let me figure out how it's going to happen. We had this company come in yesterday, Zadara Storage, who we've been proposing, and I get storage guys all the time saying, we can do this, or we can do that, or can't you take this to market, or can't you do that? And they came in and they talked to three of my guys, a sales guy, a tech guy, and they walked out. I said, well, how'd that go? Rolling the eyes and like, oh my God, you should see what they could do. It's absolutely amazing. They spent 15 minutes showing us this stuff. We could do this with it. We could do that with it. We could solve this major IOPS problem in the cloud, stuff that geeks like us care about. And I said, they showed it to you? He goes, yeah, we saw it. It was fantastic. Now, next call is to get us something in account so we can try it out and see if it actually works, get our hands on it, because again, this is the cloud. I should be able to count by the end of the day, right, and up and running on it. And I think you really had to go to these vendors and say, show me what you can do and get me online and doing it right now so I can see how real it is. I want to know if it's going to improve my business. Let me figure out if it's going to make me faster or cheaper. Let me do it. That's about what the cloud's about, right, and getting involved that way. And so many guys right now are still just slideware.
Show me is good. Here's a thought. CEOs, leaders as you are, high-ups, the shakedown. When the shakedown comes, what effect is it going to have on our poor audience? Is that going to bewilder them? Is the people they've gone with going to be eaten up and cast aside? Their engineers stolen, put out a bit? How's it going to work? The shake-up is coming, right? I mean, it's coming. When will it come? That's the first question. Is it coming next year?
It's already happened, right? I mean, depends on the area. So you were here, a year and a half ago, and there were 1 million of these front-end cloud configuration engine guys, right? That was every single vendor you saw was a front-end. We're going to front-end all the clouds because the clouds don't have front ends, which of course they do. So we're going to put a front end. I see maybe 3 of those guys here this year. Now this year it's all about cloud orchestration and cloud stack. What did you say? There's 25 companies now in the space. Cloud stacked vendors, right? And so we're shaking this. You had a long run to go, but you're going to shake it from one to the next, and the engineers are moving for that to the cloud stack vendors. We'll be down, you said 5. I'm saying 2 or 3 on the cloud stack vendors by this time next year, there'll be 5 that anybody wants to listen to for the Santa Clara show. We'll say the New York show will be down to 12.
But with any impact on our poor friends here?
Yeah, they'll just move to whatever the next hot part of the cloud is, storage, virtualization, or whatever the case may be.
Okay. Does that make sense to you, Rodney? You're expecting to be consolidated?
I do. I think within 18 months, essentially the business model will be set. And I think who plays within that, I think you'll see, we believe that the hybrid cloud will be the most important cloud. So being able to provide software that enables a private cloud, to be able to provide an off-prem solution for DR, or that elusive bursting term that really doesn't happen today but likely will happen in the next couple of years. I think you'll see the larger players look to grab various assets that complete a complete spectrum in that regard. I think Citrix's acquisition of Cloud.com was relatively, an indication of that. Announced on the same day that essentially VMware referred to vSphere 5 as a cloud OS, speaking to their more broader, I think, intentions around servicing the space. I think in the next 18 or so months, the next 3-year cycle of competition will be set, largely. And I think the relevant players will have a home, either as an independent provider, a niche provider, or within a larger enterprise looking to address the full spectrum. And then I think there'll be a very competitive cycle, and innovation and re-innovation will cycle into that as well. But in the next 18 months, the next 3 years will be set. That's my opinion.
All right. Next question goes around global IT spending meltdown. But here you all are, smiles on your faces, backs straight. Cloud Expo gets twice as big from one show to the next. Can we map just that correlation? What is it about cloud computing that has made it completely a counterplay to, I know it's basic, but let's just go over it again because it seems to be real. Wasn't just hype for one. So just spell out, I don't know who wants to go first. Spell out what is going on a global basis that is making this a counter trend that seems to be resistant to that spending meltdown. Martin.
The way we look at it is the world has an enormous growth in connected devices, and it's laptops, it's phones, it's Kindles, iPads, everything, all the devices that have an IP address, and it's just growing exponentially. It will grow 100 times in the next few years, and when it does so, the only way to serve it is through cloud infrastructure. The old client-server paradigm just doesn't stretch there. We must say goodbye to client-server and build something new. And that's why we see shifts on every layer of the stack. Infrastructure as software, infrastructure as a service, software as a service, platform as a service, they are all being rewritten now because that's the only way to deal with the variable, unpredictable, enormous load that we'll get from this. And that's what's driving cloud, and that's why it's inevitable. That's why it will absolutely happen, and it's about agility and elasticity.
I think fear is one thing, but I think also, cost is one thing, but I think it's also a fear of not being competitive. If you're not leveraging a modern stack of technology, you won't be competitive in the markets you serve. I think everybody has sort of come to that conclusion. Now, I think it depends on your space. Your web native, Web 2.0 guys that are deploying essentially fully modern technologies to run their business case realized this a number of years ago. The larger enterprises that have to deal with the complexities of legacy app migration within the cloud are realizing this now, we feel. And so I think it's a degree of short-term cost, long-term competitive fear of not being able to service properly.
Warren.
I agree with all those comments. I would add, there's also a transfer of wealth going on here within the industry. I mean, the global IT economy is $3.3 trillion. 3.3 trillion with a T, okay? It's very large. There are new technologies and new industries that are driving cloud adoption, that is for sure. But all the rest of the global IT economy that has been around for years is slowly shifting to the cloud as well. So regardless of new technologies, I think we're going to see the cloud grow just as people shift from one use case to another. I mean, what I like to talk about, 3 years ago, it used to take IT professionals about 2 days to deploy a server that would be 10% utilized and would last for about 3 years. Now it takes 10 minutes to deploy a server that will be 90% utilized and is static because it's bought as a service. It's a tremendous shift in resources and utilization, efficiency, and cost structure. So that's what's going to drive that 3.3 trillion from one hand to the other.
Rodney, you mentioned fear. Sorry, Trevor, I'll come to you. You mentioned fear. If there's such a thing as cloud time, this sort of accelerated, should one be afraid? I mean, if people do not have some kind of go-to-cloud strategy as they leave this show, are they really in danger?
Yeah. I think
they
so.
Are in danger. It's that extreme.
And I think they should really be fearful if they're not buying a Virtustream solution. But no, I think the competitive landscape, again, depends on your use case and the sector you're in. If you're leveraging the commodity cloud-based solutions, in a web-native environment, it sort of means one thing, your ability to scale. It's a necessity. If you're an enterprise dealing with sort of a hybrid compute topography of legacy apps, various degrees of tenured web developed apps and the like, I think it's going to be fundamentally a race for efficiency, but we fundamentally believe that the larger companies, as they leverage this concept, forget the word cloud, just truly leverage the concept of pooled resource technology. It will allow them to effectively, achieve speed to market, achieve competitive advantage. We fundamentally believe that, and we also think there's going to be a bit of a rationalization. The public cloud guys will tend to tell you that they can handle everything. The private cloud guys will tend to fearmonger on security and performance. It's not that simple. You really need elements of both from that standpoint, and a private cloud done wrong can be more expensive than a dedicated hosted system and the like. So I think it's the time for generalizations, being the bullshit slayer. I think it's time for generalizations to kind of fade now down to the really hard sort of detailed work. And in larger enterprises, it takes a good degree of insight to figure that out.
Treb?
Well, and you hit the two. It's great, because what I was going to say was for both items. One of the reasons global IT spend is going down is because they don't have to spend it as much. I mean, we have gotten big enough in cloud, and you see this mostly still in the U.S. now, being part of a global company, but we're seeing it real in the U.S. that every time someone spins up another cloud server, they're not only not buying a server, they're not buying a switch, they're not buying a router. The hardware guy, selling hardware in the U.S. is getting to be an increasingly difficult proposition. And that's going to start extending outwards. And as a result, that now leads into the fear factor. I mean, if you're going in there going, hey, where's your new next set of switches for your infrastructure? And guys, we just been, we're okay for right now. They're saying they're okay for right now because so much of their new stuff has been going out on the cloud. And that is now big enough. I mean, this is real revenue big enough. It hit the hosting guys first. I mean, we got slaughtered when Amazon first came out. And now it's beginning to hit the hardware guys as well. And that is having a real impact, and they're finally waking up and saying, okay, we have to have some sort of cloud solution, not because of a press release, but because we don't have anything to take to market. We don't have anything that's selling when I walk out there today. And it's still a magnitude bigger on hardware, but when it comes to their growth numbers and their ability to continue driving, I think we can look at pretty much every big hardware vendor in the US right now and see the struggles they're having. And while some of that's global IT trends, they're smart enough to know. I use the example here of the Valley, is where it starts and it tends to go out. 10 years ago, Cisco, Sun, HP made boatloads selling stuff to people in the Valley. Even after the drop, right? Even after 2001 and 2002, they made boatloads selling stuff to people out here. I can guarantee you they have almost no sales force focused on anybody under 1,000 people in the Valley today, because nobody in those companies are buying anything from those vendors. And that doesn't stop here, and then the rest of the world goes on and keeps doing things the old way. Those trends tend to come out from here.
Service providers are the new big market.
Well, yeah, but the service providers, but we spend a lot less. We have a lot better,
it's a more efficient
we have a lot better negotiating leverage. I mean, I'm buying one 500 and half a terabyte Dell box and putting 100 systems on it. Dell used to sell those 100 systems separately. Guess how much they sold those 100 systems for? A lot more than my 1/2 terabyte Mongo box that I'm splitting up.
We deal with a lot of companies that are multinational and are looking for their expansion opportunities into emerging markets. And they see that as the way that they're going to grow. And one of the takeaways from that is that they just simply can't afford to put the IT footprint in country in those emerging markets that they could in a first world industrialized nation that they might have been playing in. In many places, the infrastructure just doesn't simply exist. And so they're looking to cloud footprint as a way for them to compress the overall stack cost, be able to put in much more granular, small infrastructure in places, and then utilize that to go service customers. So it isn't necessarily that it's everything that everybody said is, I think, true. The overall trends are just that you can do it, but you're also being forced to, just simply because you could not grow your business in those markets, at the same footprint and the IT spend that you were.
But I like Treb's overall point that so as the shrink comes, cloud is growing bigger within that. So watch the one trend, but still be bullish.
It's not dissimilar to what the major IT service providers had to deal with, 15, 20 years ago with the emergence of right-shore. Right, it was an issue where the India and Asian-based labor arbitrage markets really were cannibalistic to top-line revenue. but you have to you can't not do it, right? You wouldn't survive. The firms that didn't adopt the right blended go-to-market strategy in that regard failed, went away. Bearing Point was a great example of that. So I think you're seeing the same thing, and I think there's a metaphor actually today to the hardware vendors.
Let's give you, because you've come all the way, and because I think the audience will appreciate this, let's try it out on yourself. You're all successful. What metric are you using? What is making you say, oh my God, I can tell you why this is going so well. Let me just tell you what happened in the last quarter. What are your metrics? How do you do it? Beyond just numbers, like is it accounts, is it, so I don't know, who wants to kick off on that? Just, again, to give this audience, what should they be hearing from the successful company? If they're not hearing this, then okay, let's go Dave and we'll go Martin.
Well, I mean, I think that, we talked about the fact that the market is way overserved right now, and one of the indicators on who's really finding traction is just revenue growth. ServiceMesh is growing 2 to 3x per year. We're one of the fastest growing companies. We're servicing large enterprises. And that tells you something about kind of where the market is and the fact that we've moved from kind of the POC stage of cloud adoption into the real production stage. I mean, we've got customers really doing it, really moving large amount of workloads and looking at the migration and remediation of existing workloads running in data centers. I mean, a lot of our customers have gotten to the point where they're saying, do I need to build another data center ever again? Right? Or is what I have enough? Can I basically retrofit and even sell off and shrink as I go into cloud just because I'm getting the density that I need and the standardization that I need around environments that can run all the workloads that I've got? And is that something that's actually available to me?
All right. ServiceMesh, revenue booming. Martin, Eucalyptus.
So I think it's important to see that although we have compression of IT costs, we have higher density, we have higher utilization, we also have an even bigger growth of computing in the world. And these are a little bit counterintuitive because the one would say you need less money, fewer servers, less compute power, less data centers. But at the same time, the compute needs are growing enormously because we're collecting more data than ever. Everything can be detected, every click can be measured, and we measure them and in real time. So the demands are growing on that side. And for us, it's finding the intersection of those two. Find those people who grow so fast that they must compress costs and increase density to just keep going. And that is a lucrative market. But there are those who are just compressing, and that's not the market. And there are those who are growing and cannot manage the growth because they're not using new technology. So and that's also not a market. But in the intersection, it's just amazing what that growth is. And you can measure it in downloads, you can measure it in cloud starts, you can measure it in revenues, you can measure it in user base, and it's just going through the roof.
Warren?
Well, I think revenue growth is obviously something we track, and we've seen triple-digit revenue growth, and that's great. But I think peeling it back one layer, what's important for us is seeing how individual customers are growing with us, because year, 2 years, 3 years ago, people were testing the cloud. So it's great if you have tens of thousands of new customers that are paying you X cents per hour and just testing out a server. But as you see that revenue grow within your customer base, within each customer, that's a great sign for cloud adoption. It shows that they've moved from proof of concept and testing the waters to production deployment of cloud servers and using that technology for all of their infrastructure. And that's what we've been seeing in the last 12 to 18 months, especially.
Rodney?
Yeah, so revenue and referenceable clients are kind of like breathing to me, right? You need them to not only prosper, but to stay alive. I think, a little bit of a derivative of some of the other comments, customer ROI on your solutions, ROA on your solutions, true production level use case return based upon your solution. And the way that I look at that there is if my clients are able to drive through an absolute superior return, that's a very scalable concept in the markets that I'm looking to address. Complex solutions, significant return on investment. The real hard dollar, real hard measure of return there.
Sounds reasonable. Treb, Mr. Booming OpSource.
I obviously the first thing you always say is the revenue. The one metric that is actually a brand new metric for us that we're looking at is unsold revenue growth. I love one thing about the cloud. Over the last quarter, we really just come into this realization, even today when you asked me this question, is that we grew more revenue on people we didn't talk to than on people we did.
Unsold revenue.
I mean, honestly, I look about 55 times a day. I check the usage graphs. Every time I got 3 seconds, hey, what's the latest usage? Is it ever going up or down? Where are we at today? And right now, the amount we're growing on people that we have a relationship with and are already using, but are just using more and more resources, has surpassed the number of amount of growth we're getting by signing new contracts. And is
that what you think about when you're asleep?
By the way, all the time.
The growth.
It's great, fantastic. By the way, and the commissions are way less on that too, as a side. But I will take it because I don't like to always just talk about the companies and stuff. And we talk about, we talked about how much more we use technology than we used to, and how that's impacting the growth of our business. We'll talk even now about how much more. I look every time I see something that is now cloud enabled that wasn't cloud enabled before. And the latest for me is this, I'm driving in and I'm using this thing called Waze, which is a GPS on your phone. And the really cool thing about this idea is that anybody who has this turned on automatically sends back information about how fast their car is traveling down the road. And they can also highlight if they hit an accident or something. But the main one is it's measuring your speed down these roads and bringing it back in, and then using that to give an average time to travel down Lawrence Expressway, for example. And I'm going, oh my God, GPSs are never going to be the same. When you think about now them not just being a way to get real-time traffic reports, which is even a fairly new phenomena. Most of us probably don't have a GPS that still gets real-time traffic reports. But you take it back to having real-time reporting back on what every single car is doing on every single roadway, and bringing that information back into the cloud, and then using that as the way to determine where you're going. GPS has just got about 10 times more powerful than they were last year because of the cloud. And that is amazing. I keep seeing technology like that wasn't cloud enabled before, that comes up with things I hadn't even thought about until some smart guy figured it out. And that's going to keep driving the adoption of these systems.
All right, well, we're out of time, but I just want to give a takeaway to our audience. We have a keynote coming up. Somebody asked me, so what makes a cloud superstar? And I posit an answer to this now, having listened to these gentlemen. If you're wondering, see if this works for you. It seems to me you have to be an optimist. Got to be an optimist. These are optimists. They're running really successful companies because they're infusing it with their optimism. But here's the key differentiator. Optimism anchored in reality. If these guys didn't convince you of that, then let me convince you of that. They are optimists, but it's anchored in reality. So let's give it up for Treb Ryan, CEO of OpSource, Mårten Mickos, we're not doing that, Dave Roberts, ServiceMesh, Rodney Rogers, Virtustream, and Warren Heffelfinger from GoGrid. I'm sure you will see them all in the course of the day, as they will see you. Thank you, and thank you for joining us out there on the World Wide Web. Now it's time to come physically into the keynote room. Thank you so much.